Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to our first edition of No Covers, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Coming to you out of the port city of Wilmington, North Carolina. Been wanting to do this show for some time. Love that music. I grew up on that music. That's the sound of Roots from Alex Haley. That's how we grew up, watching Roots. That was the turning point. I remember when we came home and Roots was on that week when it first came out. When that series came out, time stood still for us as blacks, especially at my age. I remember it clear. Time just stood still. I mean, you watched it and it was glued to the TV. It was really the first time you seen that many black folks on TV, man. Oh, but you watch your history. That was just such a phenomenal show that changed the course of time for me. So I'm so glad, and from that day on, I've been studying black history. No Covers, Can't Stop, Won't Stop comes from that time period. And every day we come with black history. And I'm going to share a lot of the sources doing these TV shows, these audio shows, because I've been wanting to do this for some time. We always said we were going to do a weekly show of No Covers, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Give you a book I want you to check out. This book for the day, Life Upon These Shores. Look at African American History, 1513 to 2008. Henry Louis Gates. Very excellent book. That's one of our main dictionaries, one of our main libraries. We've got a couple more over there that we use. African American Registry. We use that a lot. Google AA Registry. You can pull it up. Some of the posts we use in the daytime, we pull from Registry. And what we do is we added an extra touch to most of our posts. If you notice, we try to bring the visual attraction to the post as well as the lesson so that you're attracted to the visual. You get to recognize the face. It's called a face recognition test. The objective of the No Covers, Can't Stop, Won't Stop is that you begin to recognize leaders in your history the same way you recognize Thomas Jefferson, the same way you recognize Lincoln, the same way you recognize Benjamin Franklin, same way you recognize George Washington. You see their faces on money, and you can recognize them. But if I give you Lewis Latimer, you don't know who he is. If I give you Charles Drew, you're like, who that? He look white. Who that guy? You don't know him because these things, these ideas, these people have not been programmed in your brain. So No Covers, Can't Stop, Won't Stop is a daily attack on your brain that you begin to put it in your memory bank. Because a person without a history of their past, of who they are, what they are, Bob and both Garvey say it's like a tree without roots. A tree without roots is sitting there about to die because it doesn't have roots. If you cut the roots off of a tree, it can't get to the source of water. So if you want to kill a tree, just start cutting the root off. You cut the roots off and you start seeing it wither up because it can't get to its source. And water is its source of life. So if you can't get to your source of life, which is your history, these books, your history, you look at the people dead. Because we're not tapped into our source of life. We're not tapped into our history of who we are and what we are and how we got here. How we came to be in this condition that we're in now called slavery all over again if you really understand it. And how you going to get free all over again if you really understand it. If you study this history, you'll pick up stories like the one today. Robert Smalls. Today is the birthday of Robert Smalls. Robert Smalls, before the South, before the war started, many of the Southern slaves had prestigious jobs. Not prestigious jobs. Ain't nothing prestigious about being a slave. Maybe strike that. Many of them had jobs that wasn't on the field. They had skilled jobs. They were skilled people. And Robert Smalls and his crew, they used to work the boat because they were able to navigate the ship. They knew waterways from Africa. They knew how to work waterways. They knew how to work boats. And they would work the waterways. And they would take the cotton from the field down the waterway to the market. Or down the waterway out to the ship going out. But as they worked these waterways and moved the product, goods and service, the waterways, the knowledge of the waterways, how to navigate was very important. Especially the captain who had a crew full of slaves, maybe a few workers, but the slaves were cheaper. So 3 men could man a vessel. When they had slaves that could man the vessel, they could go ahead down the waterways and make a lot of money because they had to pay less because they had slaves that worked and knew how to navigate the waterways. So Robert Smalls was very studious. He studied his captain. He studied him. He had worked on this vessel hauling cotton, and then when the war started, the captain, of course, was getting more money paid for the army because during that time they were cutting blockade off, doing blockade. Blockade was a strategic method the North used to use. In a blockade, the North would come up and block their vessels and keep the Southern vessels from going out and getting ammunition from a certain city. So say if they wanted Fort Sumter, for instance, down in Charleston, or right here in Wilmington, they had a blockade. They say if they wanted Wilmington, they wanted Fort Fisher, they wanted to get Fort Fisher out in the ocean, they would blockade. And they would set up their ships so that the supplies couldn't enter into Wilmington by boat. They would have to come in by land. And by land, they had their forces, so they were trying to cut them off. Cut off their ammunition, cut off their food, cut off their water. And that's how you starve an army out, make an army weak, and then you eventually can overtake them. So the blockade was strategy that the North would use, because you got to remember, the North is coming from the North. They're not from the South. So the only way they can beat the South is to cut off their supplies, make them weak, make them a weaker vessel so they can come in and conquer them by land. And so right there in Fort Fisher, the slaves were sent down to Fort Fisher to the beach there to take the sand and move it back up and build that big barricade that you walk up called Fort Fisher if you ever go down. If you and your children never go down there on field trip. And I hope so many of our children are tuning in to this show, because this is really for them and the adults, but mostly for the children. If you don't do anything else, these 8 o'clock nights that we're doing this every Tuesday, put your child in front of this camera and put your child in front of that mic and let them listen to me talk about this history. Excuse me, and let them learn something. And so the slaves in Wilmington would swim out to the ships and get free. And so it is with Robert Smalls. Robert Smalls had calculated, he has planned as you read the story, and that night the soldiers went to town, got a little tipsy. The captain went to town, got a little tipsy, came in a little late, had a little drunken bout, and they had waited. They had planned, and they knew the night was the night, and they made their move. Picked up their family along the way, went to every check post, dressed up like the captain. They had knew the routine. Blow the whistle, wave them on. Blew the whistle, wave them on, until they got to the north. And then they saw the vessel come. Instead of gunning it down, they turned it over and turned the vessel over to the north and walked right into their freedom aboard those vessels. And later the story shows that Robert Smalls and his crew became a valuable asset to the Northern Army, because now the North not only had a vessel that they paid Robert Smalls for, paid him and his crew for the vessel as compensation, and gave them their freedom, and made them valuable assets in the Northern Army, because now they had someone who knew the waterways of South Carolina and the other areas, and who navigate those vessels down there. Very good story. What did he learn? What did we learn? What did we learn? This ain't no Mr. Rogers hour. This is the real Mr. Rogers here. What did we learn? We learned to be persistent, freedom at all costs, and pick up your family along the way. Yeah, study Mr. Robert Smalls. And after it's war, go keep studying the history. Became a person in legislature, became back in the South, was doing great things in the city. And we'll pick up his study in this book. We'll pick up his story a couple years later after the war. We'll pick up Robert Smalls again, and we'll see how his persistence never stopped. He never wavered. He never was weak. Always was strong. Those are lessons you learn in school today. Those are lessons you learn in life today, mother and father. And teach these lessons to your children. No Covers can't stop, won't stop. We'll be coming to you every week. We want you to participate with us. If you don't, again, get a copy of this book. This is one of the manuals we're going to be using. A African American Registry. Go over there every morning. Pull up the No Covers page every morning. Study our history every morning that we post. And we don't just we hand pick what we give you. We don't try to repeat things that we gave you last year. We go get new stuff this year. And we are also coming out, hopefully real soon, with No Covers Can't Stop, Won't Stop. But I want to make sure I document and give credit to credit is due. And some of the stuff we do find on our own, we go do our own research. You got Google nowadays, young people. You can type in Black history and pull up a ton of information on who you are. Type in African American history. Study all the countries in Gambia. You should know countries in Africa. You should know them. You should know the cities in Gambia. You should know the cities in Senegal. You should know who's related. What's the difference in West Africa, South Africa? That's your home. That's where you from. Yeah, I know. Thought y'all was from Creekwood. No covers, can't stop. We won't stop. We won't stop. Because we can't stop. I'm your brother, I'm your host, Al Elamine. Peace and blessings. And keep running.